Trump and Elon Musk must be held accountable for the horrific plane crash that
happens when you fire a safety committee.
Trump has American blood on his hands. All of this is Trump's fault.
Within just hours of a national tragedy, the internet is already weaponizing it and spreading insane conspiracies. So this morning has been rough for me, guys. If you've been following me for a while, you know I used to live in DC. I still go there pretty regularly. I've flown in and out of DCA on these small commuter planes with like 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 people, too many times to count. And I woke up to this horrific, tragic story about the American Airlines flight that crashed with a helicopter where over 60 Americans were killed. It's really shocking and heartbreaking stuff. But as soon as I saw it unfolding and I'd processed it for just a moment, I realized it was going to turn into a political cluster. And it already has. We're going to go through the insane fake propaganda spreading across the internet as people try to blame Trump for this or blame Republicans. And we're going to take a look at the press conference Trump gave where he offered his own explanations for what went wrong. Up first, here's a compilation I put together of TikTok influencers explaining why this is all Trump's fault and how he has blood on his hands or whatever.
Trump and Elon Musk must be held accountable for the horrific plane crash that occurred last night. People are already paying in blood for the incompetence and corruption of the Trump administration.
I think it's time to give this a read. Quote, Trump guts key aviation safety committee, fires head of TSA and Coast Guard. Also, 8 days ago, Donald Trump signed another executive order to freeze all air traffic control hiring.
Trump fires heads of TSA and Coast Guard and guts key aviation safety advisory committee. He fired the head of the Coast Guard and the head of the TSA and eliminated all members of a key aviation security advisory group 8 days ago. And this is going to be the result. Maybe not a mid-air collision, but people are going to get sick, people are going to go poor, people are going to get hurt, and it's by design. And I'll never forgive you, assholes.
This is what happens when you cut federal spending to these agencies that are necessary to protect us as the American consumer. You guys would rather save dimes than save lives.
This is the kind of stuff that happens when you fire a safety committee. Mid-air accidents should not be happening at all, but especially in DC, it's almost like Trump has no idea what he's doing.
Trump has American blood on his hands. 74 of the 79 passengers and crew members died. 4 people in vehicles on the bridge where crashed also died. But Trump, being a incompetent bozo, signing executive orders that have negative impacts and consequences on American lives is not anything new. All of this is Trump's fault.
I'm going to be so for real with you guys. Basically, everything they just said is incorrect or misleading. These people have no idea what they're talking about. I don't think any of them have read the articles they're sharing, and none of them had heard of any of these people or these agencies until 5 minutes ago when they dug them up with a Google search to try to shit on Trump. We're going to walk through one by one each of these claims, and I'm going to explain to you why they make no sense and why it's not Trump's fault and none of these things caused this crash based on what we know now. But first, I was curious, where did this come from? And my suspicion is that a lot of these TikTok talking heads, by the way, guys, these are huge influencers with millions of combined followers. These videos are popping off and spreading like wildfire. These are not just a couple tiny accounts. Anyway, I think I traced this back to the origin of this rumor, which is the far left activist who calls himself a journalist, Aaron Rupar, who tweeted as this was all unfolding late last night, headlines from a week ago as an incident near DCA appears to be the deadliest aviation disaster in the US since 9/11. And the headline is a Huffington Post article titled Trump Guts Key Aviation Safety Committee, Fires Head of TSA, Coast Guard. This is just straight up factually inaccurate. While what happened last night was terrible and there was an enormous human toll, it wasn't the worst aviation disaster since 9/11. There have been worse ones, like an incident in Queens where more than 200 people died. That's, I guess, somewhat pedantic, but it's just like, if you're a journalist, check your facts before you say things, especially in the aftermaths of tragedies. More importantly, the heads of of the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, right? The people that make you take your shoes off, and the Coast Guard, the person in charge of the Coast Guard, those are political appointees. So it is normal and extremely common that a president fires those people and puts in his own people when he takes office from an administration from a different party. They do that across all sorts of agencies, whether it's a Democratic president or a Republican president. And to be clear, while they're doing that, when they fire them and they're waiting to confirm a new person, somebody steps up from the civil service and serves as the acting director. So somebody's still doing the job. Usually somebody who's been there a long time, has been a part of the agency and knows what they're doing. So it's not like there's no one doing these jobs. He just removed Biden's appointee because that's what presidents typically do is remove the person that the president from the other party had put in and put somebody with their beliefs in. That's just normal. It's not scandalous. And it had absolutely nothing to do with this crash. TSA screens security as people get on planes, right? So it's to stop, threats of attacks or extremist groups or things like 9/11 that happened. They don't do anything. They have literally nothing to do with air traffic control, with avoiding accidents and collisions. Irrelevant. Same with the Coast Guard. No real involvement here. And they keep talking about this Aviation Safety Committee. To be clear, none of these people have ever heard of this committee. They have no idea what it is or what it does. They're just weaponizing this because they found it with a quick Google search. I took 5 minutes to actually read about this committee. And to be clear, it has no hands-on or day-to-day involvement in air traffic control or accident prevention or anything like that. It is an advisory committee that makes recommendations to the TSA about airport security, right? The kinds of things they do to screen out threats through TSA and stop crimes from happening. Again, not about airplane safety in terms of preventing crashes. It took me, guys, like 30 minutes of basic research looking at the TSA website to find this stuff out, to separate fact from fiction, to realize how demagogic and dishonest this propaganda is. None of these actions by the Trump administration, well, maybe you object to them for other reasons and we could have that conversation. None of them contributed to this accident, which we still don't know very much about. We don't know exactly what went wrong or what happened, and responsible people wait until we learn more to start throwing blame and casting aspersions, and don't start using them to attack their political opponents while the bodies are still warm. Now, what about this hiring freeze that they talked about? Could this have contributed to the crash in some way? That's what journalists like Mehdi Hasan, formerly of MSNBC, said on Twitter. Even a Democratic member of Congress shared that she was praying for the families and demanding answers, sharing a press release from her committee about Trump's dangerous freeze of air traffic control hiring. This also has no evident connection to what happened at DCA. First, we don't even know yet if air traffic control did anything wrong, or if maybe the helicopter pilot messed up. All of this will have to come out in the wash. And then, even if you assume that the air traffic controller did something wrong, how a hiring freeze put in place, simply meaning they weren't going to hire new employees because they're trying to get the federal budget under control, God forbid, how that would have contributed to this is completely unclear. No one's bothering to explain it at all, what the connection is there. And for me, the math is simply not mathing. He instituted this freeze 8 days ago. Yes, there's a shortage of air traffic controllers, and we'll talk more about why that is later. But the idea that anybody would have been hired and made it through training and been there to relieve overworked stress, or people who had been pulling extra time or anything like that, which we don't even know if that was happening, is totally unrealistic. A person wouldn't even be hired yet, let alone through all their training. It wouldn't have had any impact on this. You're just bringing up something irrelevant to try to tar a freak accident and tragedy and throw that at the people you hate politically. That's disgusting from a sitting congresswoman. And it's disgusting from these TikTok influencers who are accusing Trump and Elon Musk of having blood on their hands, and as if they are responsible for this, and not even doing basic research or logically establishing any remote connection between their actions and this incident. They're just kind of assuming Trump bad, and therefore he must have blood on his hands for this because Trump is evil and everything's his fault. You sound deranged. And this is so gross and so disrespectful to the victims of this tragedy and their families that people are already leaping to politicize this. And I know, to be clear, that Republicans do this too sometimes. We saw this when Biden was president. There were freak accidents or tragedies that people blamed on him. And it is a part of our human instinct and nature, unfortunately. But it is a really toxic one, this sense of tribalism that leads us to constantly blame others and attack others. And I think we should all be trying to overcome that instinct, not succumbing to it and joining in on a frenzy to destroy our partisan opponents while people are grieving for their husbands and wives and brothers and sisters and children and parents. It's like, gosh, it's just terrible. You guys let me know what you think of this toxic online response. Are you even surprised at this point? I wish I could say that I am, but I'm not. So let me know what you think in the comments. I do read the comments and I'm always interested in hearing what you guys have to say. Do hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet.